The building sat on a busy street, surrounded by cafes, offices, and people who passed by every day without ever looking up. If you didn't know what was inside, you'd never guess it held millions in diamonds. No signs, no flashing lights. Just stone walls, tinted windows, and a single front door that opened and closed like any other. Inside, the air was always cool. Not cold, just controlled. Diamonds, like control, temperature, humidity, order. The vault was underground. It was heavy, thick steel, layers of locks that required codes, cards, and time. Not just one person could open it. That was the whole point. The system was designed so trust was split between people. If one failed, the others would stop everything. That's what everyone believed. On the morning of the discovery, nothing looked wrong. The guard clocked in at 8:03 a.m. He poured coffee. He checked the monitors. He did what he always did. The screens showed empty hallways and locked doors. The vault camera showed the same image it always showed, a closed door that never moved. At 9:12 a.m., the vault was opened. This was routine. Diamonds were moved in and out all the time. Inventory checks, transfers, sales, paperwork that turned stones into numbers and numbers into money. But when the inner door slid open, something felt off. Not panic, not fear, just quiet. One of the senior handlers stepped inside and froze. He didn't shout. He didn't swear. He just stood there, staring at the shelves. Later, he would say that his first thought was that the lights were wrong, too bright, too empty. The shelves were clean, too clean. Cases that should have been heavy were gone. Trays that held rows of diamonds, cut, polished, labeled, were missing. Not smashed, not overturned, removed. Someone had taken them carefully, slowly, like they had all the time in the world. At first, the team assumed a mistake. Maybe the diamonds had been moved early. Maybe paperwork hadn't been updated. Maybe someone forgot to log a transfer. This is what people do when reality feels too big. They shrink it. They check the logs. Everything looked perfect. Every access time matched. Every signature was there. Every code entry aligned with the schedule. No alarms. No forced entry. No camera failures. According to the system, nothing had happened, and yet millions of dollars in diamonds were gone. The police arrived quietly. No flashing lights outside. No tape. The building stayed open. The street stayed busy. People walked past holding coffee cups, completely unaware that one of the cleanest diamond thefts in history had just been discovered beneath their feet. Investigators started with the obvious question: who knew the system? Only a handful of people had full access. Fewer had partial access. Even fewer understood how the timing worked, how certain locks delayed opening, how sensors reset, how logs recorded actions in a specific order. This was not a job for an outsider. At least, that's what everyone said at first. Interviews began. Employees were questioned one by one. They sat in small rooms and repeated their routines. What time they arrived, what doors they opened, what codes they entered. Most of them said the same thing, using different words. I did what I always do. And that was the problem. Because someone had done something different. Security footage was reviewed frame by frame. Hours of nothing. Hallways empty. Doors closed. The vault camera showed the door opening only during approved windows. No strange faces. No masks. No rushed movements. Whoever took the diamonds didn't sneak. They walked. They didn't hide from the system. They moved inside it. By the end of the first day, the number became clear. Not one diamond, not a handful. An entire collection stones that had taken years to gather. Some traced back to mines halfway across the world. Some already sold on paper, waiting for delivery. Gone. That night, Investigators sat around a table covered in photos, logs, and printed timelines. The room smelled like cold coffee and paper. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, someone said the thought that no one wanted to hear. What if the system worked exactly as designed? The room went quiet. Because if that were true, then the vault hadn't failed. It had cooperated. And that meant the heist wasn't about breaking in. It was about belonging. Somewhere, someone knew when to walk in, what to touch, what to take, and, most importantly, when to walk out without leaving a trace. In the days after the diamonds disappeared, the building became a different place. Doors closed more slowly. Conversations stopped when someone entered the room. People began to notice each other in ways they hadn't before. Who arrived early, who stayed late, who seemed too calm. This is what happens after a clean heist. There is no broken glass to focus on, no clear villain, just people and questions. Investigators started with the timeline, not the night of the theft, but the weeks before it. They mapped everything. Shift changes, code updates, maintenance schedules. They learned that the vault's security system worked on Windows, short periods of time when certain actions were allowed, expected, and therefore invisible. If you opened the vault during a window, the system didn't panic. It trusted you. Only a few people understood these windows well enough to use them without triggering alarms. Fewer still understood how the logs could be read after the fact, and how they could be made to look perfectly normal. That's when one name started appearing again and again. Not loudly, not suspiciously, quietly. His name was Daniel Mercer. Mercer wasn't flashy. He wasn't rich. He didn't look like someone who moved millions in diamonds. He wore plain suits, drove an old car, ate lunch at the same cafe every day, and tipped the same amount every time. He worked in systems oversight, which is a polite way of saying he knew how everything worked, but wasn't supposed to touch anything himself. Mercer didn't open vaults. He didn't move diamonds. He didn't sign off on transfers. He watched. He audited. He advised. That meant he had access to schedules, security architecture, maintenance reports, and, most importantly, patterns. He knew which alarms failed occasionally, which sensors were overly sensitive, which guards trusted the system enough to stop paying attention. When investigators interviewed Mercer, he was calm. Not defensive, not overly helpful, just calm. He answered every question. He remembered dates. He corrected small errors politely. He even laughed once, when asked if he thought the system could be beaten. Any system can be beaten, he said. That's why you don't rely on one layer. It sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. But here's the problem. Mercer had an alibi. On the night the diamonds were taken, he was not in the building. His badge never scanned. His phone placed him across town. Security cameras showed him entering his apartment building hours before the vault window opened. If this were a loud crime, Mercer would have been cleared instantly. But this was a quiet one. Investigators began to ask a different question. What if the theft didn't happen that night? What if the diamonds were removed earlier, slowly, during approved windows, over days or even weeks? What if the final discovery was just the moment when absence became impossible to ignore? They rechecked the inventory logs with fresh eyes, and that's when they noticed something strange. Every removal had been logged correctly. Every transfer was signed off. Every movement matched the rules. But the order was wrong. Small things. A code entered before a door should have been unlocked. A confirmation timestamp that came a few seconds too early. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to suggest the system was being guided, not followed. Mercer knew the system well enough to do that. But knowing isn't the same as doing. Unless someone else was acting on his knowledge. Investigators widened the net. They looked at contractors, cleaners, temporary staff, anyone who passed through the building without drawing attention. One name stood out. A maintenance technician who worked nights and weekends. Someone with partial access and very little oversight. The technician had no criminal record, no sudden wealth, no obvious motive. But he had one important thing. Instructions. Phone records showed brief calls, always under a minute, always at odd hours. Burner phones, hard to trace, harder to prove anything with. Still, the picture was forming. Not a mastermind breaking into a vault, but a planner who never touched the diamonds. Someone who understood that the safest way to steal was to make the theft look like normal work. When Mercer was brought in for a second interview, the tone changed. This time, they asked him about philosophy, about trust, about how systems fail. Mercer listened. He smiled. "You're looking for a movie villain," he said. "This isn't that kind of story." And maybe he was right, because there was still one problem. No diamonds had surfaced. None sold. None cut. None appeared on the black market. It was as if they had vanished into the air. A theft that clean doesn't end with disappearance. It ends with silence. And silence, investigators knew, usually meant one thing. The story wasn't finished yet. Not even close. By the time investigators reached the third month, the case had gone cold in a very specific way. Not forgotten. Just stalled. There were no new tips, no sudden arrests, no diamonds appearing in pawn shops or private auctions, no anonymous calls, nothing leaked, nothing surfaced. In diamond thefts, this is unusual. Diamonds are meant to move. They travel. They change hands, shapes, names. Even the most careful thief eventually needs to sell, trade, or cut. This idea began quietly, during a late-night meeting that only a few people attended. Someone asked a question that felt almost stupid at first. What if the diamonds were never meant to be sold? The room didn't react right away, because selling was the ending everyone expected. That was how these stories worked. Theft, escape, profit. But this story had already broken several rules. So investigators went back, not to the vault, but to the diamonds themselves, to their history, their type, their cuts. And that's when another pattern appeared. Many of the stolen stones were rare, but not flashy, not famous, not the kind that appear in museums or magazines. They were valuable because of their quality, not their reputation. Perfect stones are dangerous to sell. They are too easy to trace. But they are perfect for something else. Leverage. Diamonds, investigators realized, don't just buy things, unless sitting still is the plan. By the time investigators reached the third month, the case had gone cold in a very specific way. Not forgotten. Just stalled. There were no new tips, no sudden arrests, no diamonds appearing in pawn shops or private auctions, no anonymous calls, nothing leaked, nothing surfaced. In diamond thefts, this is unusual. Diamonds are meant to move. They travel. They change hands, shapes, names. Even the most careful thief eventually needs to sell, trade, or cut. This idea began quietly, during a late-night meeting that only a few people attended. Someone asked a question that felt almost stupid at first. What if the diamonds were never meant to be sold? The room didn't react right away, because selling was the ending everyone expected. That was how these stories worked. Theft, escape, profit. But this story had already broken several rules. So investigators went back, not to the vault, but to the diamonds themselves, to their history, their type, their cuts. And that's when another pattern appeared. Many of the stolen stones were rare, but not flashy, not famous, not the kind that appear in museums or magazines. They were valuable because of their quality, not their reputation. Perfect stones are dangerous to sell. They are too easy to trace. But they are perfect for something else. Leverage. Diamonds, investigators realized, don't just buy things, unless sitting still is the plan. Investigators hit a wall. They could suspect, they could infer, but they couldn't prove. No diamonds were found in Mercer's name. No money connected him directly to the missing stones. No witness could say they saw him touch a single diamond. And maybe that was the point. Because the smartest heist isn't about stealing something and running. It's about moving value from one place to another so slowly and so quietly that, by the time anyone notices, it no longer belongs to the past. Officially, the case remains open. Unofficially, most people involved believe they know what happened. They believe the diamonds were removed during normal operations. They believe knowledge, not force, made it possible. They believe the stones are sitting in places designed to outlive investigations. And Mercer? He was never charged. He lives quietly, pays taxes, files paperwork, drinks coffee in the mornings like everyone else. Sometimes, when asked years later about the case, one investigator said something that stayed with me. If someone stole millions in diamonds and then never touched the money, he said, is that a crime or a message? The vault still stands. The system was upgraded. New rules, new layers, new people watching new screens. But everyone who worked there remembers one thing. The night the vault didn't scream, the morning it was already empty. And the lesson no system likes to admit.